We all have a story. Some chapters we hold close, those moments of joy, triumph, and celebration. But then there are the chapters we'd rather tear out, the ones filled with pain, regret, and struggle, the chapters we wish we could rewrite. For a long time, I wanted to rewrite many of my chapters because the beginning of my story is sad. My childhood is a story of poverty, instability, and chaos. I grew up in a household filled with fear and abuse, and sometimes the only escape was homelessness. I have this distinct memory of sleeping in our family car, a not uncommon occurrence when we had no other place to go. My mother in the front seat, my younger brother and I sharing the back, huddled together under a blanket. I remember my mom trying to make it feel like it was an adventure, but then quietly crying after she thought we had fallen asleep. As a mother myself now, I can only imagine how it feels to feel like you're failing your children despite trying your best. Mine isn't a story I enjoy telling, and for most of my life, I avoided telling it at all, even to those closest to me. So it's not lost on me that one of the first times I tell my story out loud is in front of a room full of strangers and countless people online. But that's the point today. Today, I want to talk to you about discomfort, about getting comfortable with the things that make you uncomfortable. Because the things that make you uncomfortable are often the very things that will push you towards growth. So let me tell you how I did it. My past has always been a source of deep discomfort for me. And as I moved up in levels of education, becoming the first in my family to graduate from college and then law school, I constantly felt like I didn't belong. And that feeling only deepened as my career progressed. From being hired by an elite law firm at a salary higher than anything my family had ever seen, to becoming a law professor at an elite institution like the University of Michigan. The higher I climbed, the more out of place I felt. You know, as an attorney, your network can make your career. In particular, as a junior associate in a large law firm, working long nights and weekends, it's critical that you find your community amongst your colleagues. Finding mentors is essential. And yet, simple getting to know you questions like how many siblings I had or what my parents did for a living made me incredibly anxious. I created the most sanitized version of my story that I could without outright lying, but I cautiously omitted any reference to my younger brother, who was killed while running from the police, or my father, whose mental illness prevented him and us from living a normal life. I didn't know how to be myself around people who seemed to come from picture-perfect backgrounds. My ability to make meaningful connection inside of work and out was stifled by my discomfort with my past. I let my discomfort push me into retreat. Now, looking back, I wish I had told myself, wow, look how far you made it, how many obstacles you overcame. Instead, every time I entered a new space, every time I sat in a classroom or a boardroom, I heard a different message. Look around. People like you don't exist here. People like you don't belong here. Now, neither of those things were true, but my past, my story, my roots, and my discomfort with them had become a breeding ground for imposter syndrome. And as I navigated my academic and professional journey, I struggled and made mistakes just like anyone would. But every misstep, every negative experience, every bad grade or piece of constructive criticism only fed that little voice in my head telling me, see, I told you you're not good enough. I'll give you an example. When I started at my law firm, a partner invited me out to lunch. Now, this was a big deal. This was how you built relationships, found mentors, and got assigned the kind of work that could really propel your career forward. I knew that. I also knew I was completely out of my element. I didn't know how to talk to or connect with someone so different from me. I didn't know the etiquette of a business lunch. Was I supposed to offer to pay? Was there going to be more than one fork? Everything about this experience intimidated me. And then the waiter handed me a menu. Now, this wasn't a Michelin star restaurant, but it was far beyond anything I had experienced. The nicest restaurant I had ever been to was an Olive Garden for my graduation. I took a look at that menu, scanned it, and didn't recognize half the words. I could feel the pressure from the waiter standing next to me, the partner sitting across from me, waiting for me to make a decision. I looked and looked. I just wanted to pick something that made me look sophisticated, like I belonged there. So I did my best and blurted out my order. I'll have the squab. Never mind that I had no idea what squab was. I hoped it was some kind of exotic vegetable. Turns out it's pigeon. Squab is a fancy word for pigeon, and it is a delicacy served rare. I can only imagine the look on my face when that waiter set that plate down in front of me. Now, today, being more comfortable in these kinds of situations, I would have laughed it off, made a joke, and absolutely ordered a side of fries to eat instead. But back then I was drowning in my discomfort. I didn't know what to do. So I picked up one of my forks and a knife, cut into that pink piece of poultry, and ate it all. I can only imagine I wasn't the best conversationalist at that particular lunch. I look back on that today and laugh, but back then it wasn't funny. That lunch represented something much bigger, the overwhelming, isolating feeling that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't belong, and that because of my past, I never would. I remember thinking, you can't even handle a business lunch. How are you going to handle a corporate career? So hard on myself. You see, I had made a critical mistake. I had mistaken the pain of growth and learning through experience as proof that I wasn't good enough. I believed my past had set me too far behind, that I was fundamentally too different to ever fully belong to this professional class that I had joined. And once again, I started letting my discomfort dictate my choices. I shied away from those stretch assignments that could have accelerated my learning. I hesitated to take professional risks, convincing myself I wasn't ready. I played small in rooms where I had every right to take up space. And then, one day, I learned something that changed everything for me. It reframed the way that I experienced discomfort, and it fundamentally reshaped how I handle the fear of stepping into the unknown. It is the reason I'm standing here right now, as a professor in one of the best law schools in the world, sharing with you the very story I once tried to hide. It's most commonly known as the stages of competence, but I personally call it the vicious cycle of learning. So, what is this vicious cycle of learning, you ask? It is a model that explains the psychological states we all experience as we learn to do something new. It shows us how learning can be so hard and scary at first, but how it gets easier if you push through. So when we learn to do something new, say public speaking, we all start in stage 1, unconscious incompetence, or you don't know what you don't know. At first, the challenge of public speaking may not be obvious to you. Maybe you've never given a presentation and you think, I talk all the time, how hard could it be? Or maybe you get the feeling that it's scary, but you don't know exactly how or why it's scary, or how you do at it. So your moment comes, you step up, open your mouth, and it all falls apart. Your mind goes blank and you lose your words. And suddenly you understand, wow, this is way harder than I thought. Welcome to stage 2, conscious incompetence. You are now fully aware of the difficulty of public speaking and your shortcomings. Perhaps you rush through your words, avoid eye contact, or fidget with your hands. But the worst part is that sinking feeling that you're just bad at it. This is the painful part. This is where most people quit. They avoid future speaking opportunities, convincing themselves after just a couple of tries that they're not a natural speaker. But the truth is, nobody is. Even the most polished speaker was once a beginner. This is where growth happens, if you push through. Because with practice, you will improve. You'll make it to stage 3, conscious competence, where you can perform the skill, but you have to focus. Maybe you structure your speeches better. You can control your pacing. Maybe you even land a joke or two. But it still takes effort. It's sort of like juggling. You can keep everything in the air, but only if you concentrate. This is where repetition is key. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. And then, one day, you notice something has changed. You're asked to present, and instead of panicking, you just think, all right, let's do this. This time, you step up, and the words just flow. You don't have to remind yourself to make eye contact, you just do. You're not stuck in your head anymore, you're connecting with your audience. You made it to stage 4, unconscious competence, where the skill has become second nature. This is mastery, where you can do it without even thinking about it. This is how we all learn. This is how we all feel as we learn. I always thought it was just me, that the pain and discomfort I felt in stage 2 was proof that I wasn't cut out for certain things. Public speaking, corporate law, leadership. I told myself, you're just not a natural speaker. You're not smart enough for this job. You're not leadership material. But learning about this model in more detail changed everything. It showed me that not only was it not just me, but more importantly, that the discomfort I felt when I tried something new would eventually dissipate. This helped me shed my feelings of inadequacy and my excuses, because it gave me the optimism that with enough practice and persistence, I could learn to do almost anything. It taught me that discomfort wasn't a sign that I was incapable. It was actually proof that I was growing. And because of that, the arc of my career changed. I began to take on the tough assignments. I asked for promotions. I stepped into leadership roles. And I put myself in the running for positions I once thought were out of reach. Now, all of those things were still scary to me, but I knew they wouldn't always be scary, and that made the difference. Discomfort is just a part of learning, and everyone goes through it. Everyone you admire, every role model, every expert, every leader, they've all been stuck in stage 2. They've struggled and they felt discomfort. They just didn't let it make their decisions for them. So I want to leave you with 3 things that you can do to help you lean into discomfort and grow from it. The first is reframe your mindset. When you're in the thick of that struggle, don't think, I'm bad at this. Tell yourself, I'm in stage 2. Struggle isn't failure. It's proof that it's a natural and necessary part of learning. The nervousness before a big presentation, the struggle of making new friends, or the uncertainty of whatever new challenge, it's all temporary. Remind yourself of a time that you struggled with a skill, but eventually mastered it. Maybe something as simple as riding a bike, or something as tough as going through a big life change. You made it through that, you'll make it through this too. Second is seek out discomfort. You know, a funny thing happened to me as I put myself in new situations after learning this model. I still felt the pain and discomfort of stage 2, but it bothered me less and less each time. The more I pushed through, the more resilient I became. I got comfortable being uncomfortable. So challenge yourself to push yourself just outside of your comfort zone. You can start small. Speak up in class, introduce yourself to a new friend, sign up for that salsa lesson. Tell the waiter that's not what you ordered. It doesn't have to be something big. You can start small. Growth doesn't always happen in large leaps. It often comes in small steps. And finally, trust the process. When you're in the thick of it, when you're in that hard spot, tell yourself, it won't always feel this way. Remind yourself that discomfort is actually proof that you're growing, and tell yourself, it won't always be so tough. That's where I am right now in sharing my story. I'm somewhere between stage 2 and stage 3, telling myself, it won't always be so tough. But it was hard to include my story as a part of this TED Talk. It will be hard to know that people I know watched it and know a little bit more about my past. It still makes me uncomfortable. But I know if I push through and remain vulnerable, it will get easier. And one day, I'll get to be authentically me without even thinking about it. I hope that learning this model does for me what it did for you. Or does for you what it did for me. I hope that you'll think about the things that you're avoiding, or the things that you quit because they were hard and you felt discomfort. I hope, if those things are important to you, that you'll push through, because mastery isn't reserved for the naturally gifted. It's for those willing to endure the cycle. Thank you.